This is an ABC News special report. The Senate impeachment trial. Now reporting, George Stephanopoulos.
And we are coming on the air right now for the Senate impeachment trial of President Donald John Trump. That is the scene at the U.S. Capitol right now, where you see the House managers there. The chairman of the House Committee of Intelligence, Adam Schiff, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Gerald Nadler, and 5 other House members who will serve as the impeachment managers in the House. They are the prosecutors for the House case in the impeachment of President Trump, and they are making that walk across the Capitol there with the House Sergeant of Arms, Paul Irving, in order to present the articles of impeachment to the Senate, which is essentially the first step in the Senate trial for President Trump. There was a symbolic ceremony last night where the resolution was presented. That was followed by the Senate inviting the House to present these articles, and now these managers who are going to make the case are making that walk across the Capitol. You see Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren there as well, one of the senior Democrats on the team. She actually has worked in 3 impeachment proceedings as a staffer under the Nixon impeachment, as a member of Congress for President Clinton's, and now as a manager in the impeachment of President Trump. You're seeing there, they're making their way across the Capitol from the House side to the Senate side, through the Capitol Rotunda, and then into the Senate chamber, where they will be met by the Senate Sergeant of Arms, announced by the President Pro Tem of the Senate, and then go to read those articles of impeachment and the resolution which appointed them managers as the House. One of the things you'll see as they enter the Senate is the Senate has been slightly now reconfigured for a Senate trial, with essentially a dais up there in the front. You see it right there, and a podium in the middle where the managers will make their case, where the president's lawyers will make their arguments as well. Today we expect 2 major ceremonies. The reading of the impeachment articles now around noon, and then followed by a message sent from the Senate to the Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts, who's going to preside over this trial, and then he will make his way to the Senate at 2 p.m. Senator Charles Grassley, the President Pro Tem. Let's listen in on the Senate. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, for the information of senators, under the previous order, at 12 noon, the Senate will receive the managers of the House of Representatives to exhibit the articles of impeachment against Donald John Trump, President of the United States.
Mitch McConnell, Senate Republican Leader.
The hour of 12 noon having arrived and a quorum being present, the Sergeant at Arms will present the managers on the part of the House of Representatives.
Mr. President and members of the I announce the presence of the managers on the part of the House of Representatives to conduct proceedings on behalf of the House concerning the impeachment of Donald John Trump, President of the United States.
Managers on the part of the House will be received and escorted to the well of the Senate.
All senators in attendance today. For the bulk of this trial, they will remain silent. It is the House managers and the president's lawyers who will be doing the arguing.
The Sergeant at Arms will make the proclamation.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. All persons are commanded to keep silent on pain of imprisonment while the House of Representatives is exhibiting to the Senate of the United States articles of impeachment against Donald John Trump, President of the United States.
That proclamation will be read every day at the Senate trial.
The managers on the part of the House will now proceed.
Chairman Schiff, the lead manager for the House.
Mr. President, the managers on the part of the House of Representatives are present and ready to present the articles of impeachment which have been preferred by the House of Representatives against Donald John Trump, President of the United States. The House adopted the following resolution, which, with the permission of the Senate, I will read. House Resolution 798, appointing and authorizing managers for the impeachment trial of Donald John Trump, President of the United States. Resolved that Mr. Schiff, Mr. Nadler, Ms. Lofgren, Mr. Jeffries, Ms. Demings, Mr. Crow, and Ms. Garcia of Texas are appointed managers to conduct the impeachment trial against Donald John Trump, President of the United States, that a message be sent to the Senate to inform the Senate of these appointments, and that the managers so appointed may, in connection with the preparation and conduct of the trial, exhibit articles of impeachment to the Senate, and take all other actions necessary, which may include the following: employing legal, clerical, and other necessary assistance, and incurring such other expenses as may be necessary to be paid from amounts available to the Committee on the Judiciary under applicable expense resolutions or from the applicable account of the House of Representatives. Number two, sending for persons and papers and filing with the Secretary of the Senate on the part of the House of Representatives any pleadings in conjunction with or subsequent to the exhibition of the articles of impeachment that the managers may consider necessary. With the permission of the Senate, I will now read the articles of impeachment, House Resolution 755. House Resolution 755, impeaching Donald John Trump, President of the United States, for high crimes and misdemeanors. Resolved that Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, is impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, and that the following articles of impeachment be exhibited to the United States Senate. Articles of impeachment exhibited by the House of Representatives of the United States of America in the name of itself and of the people of the United States of America against Donald John Trump, President of the United States of America, in maintenance and support of its impeachment against him for high crimes and misdemeanors. Article 1, abuse of power. The Constitution provides that the House of Representatives shall have the sole power of impeachment, and that the President shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. In his conduct of the office of the President of the United States, and in violation of his constitutional oath faithfully to execute the office of President of the United States, and to the best of his ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and in violation of his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, Donald J. Trump has abused the powers of the presidency in that, using the powers of his high office, President Trump solicited the interference of a foreign government, Ukraine, in the 2020 United States presidential election. He did so through a scheme or course of conduct that included soliciting the government of Ukraine to publicly announce investigations that would benefit his reelection, harm the election prospects of a political opponent, and influence the 2020 United States presidential election to his advantage. President Trump also sought to pressure the government of Ukraine to take these steps by conditioning official United States government acts of significant value to Ukraine on its public announcement of the investigations. President Trump engaged in this scheme or course of conduct for corrupt purposes in pursuit of personal political benefit. In so doing, President Trump used the powers of the presidency in a manner that compromised the national security of the United States and undermined the integrity of the United States democratic process. He thus ignored and injured the interests of the nation. President Trump engaged in this scheme or course of conduct through the following means. Number one, President Trump, acting both directly and through his agents within and outside the United States government, corruptly solicited the government of Ukraine to publicly announce investigations into A, political opponent, former Vice President Joseph R. Biden Jr., and B, a discredited theory promoted by Russia, alleging that Ukraine, rather than Russia, interfered in the 2016 United States presidential election. Number two, with the same corrupt motives, President Trump, acting both directly and through his agents within and outside the United States government, conditioned two official acts on the public announcement that he had requested. A, the release of $91 million of United States taxpayer funds that Congress had appropriated on a bipartisan basis for the purpose of providing vital military and security assistance to Ukraine to oppose Russian aggression, and which President Trump had ordered suspended. And B, a head of state meeting at the White House, which the President of Ukraine sought to demonstrate continued United States support for the government of Ukraine in the face of Russian aggression. Number 3, faced with the public revelation of his actions, President Trump ultimately released the military and security assistance to the government of Ukraine, but has persisted in openly and corruptly urging and soliciting Ukraine to undertake investigations for his personal political benefit. These actions were consistent with President Trump's previous invitations of foreign interference in United States elections. In all of this, President Trump abused the powers of the presidency by ignoring and injuring national security and other vital national interests to obtain an improper personal political benefit. He has also betrayed the nation by abusing his high office to enlist a foreign power in corrupting democratic elections. Wherefore, President Trump, by such conduct, has demonstrated that he will remain a threat to national security and the Constitution if allowed to remain in office, and has acted in a manner grossly incompatible with self-governance and the rule of law. President Trump thus warrants impeachment and trial, removal from office, and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. Article 2, Obstruction of Congress. The Constitution provides that the House of Representatives shall have the sole power of impeachment, and that the President shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. In his conduct of the office of President of the United States, and in violation of his constitutional oath faithfully to execute the office of President of the United States, and to the best of his ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and in violation of his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, Donald J. Trump has directed the unprecedented, categorical, and indiscriminate defiance of subpoenas issued by the House of Representatives pursuant to its sole power of impeachment. President Trump has abused the power of the presidency in a manner offensive to and subversive of the Constitution, in that the House of Representatives has engaged in an impeachment inquiry focused on President Trump's corrupt solicitation of the government of Ukraine to interfere in the 2020 United States presidential election. As part of this impeachment inquiry, the committees undertaking the investigation served subpoenas seeking documents and testimony deemed vital to the inquiry from various executive branch agencies and offices and current and former officials. In response, without lawful cause or excuse, President Trump directed executive branch agencies, offices, and officials not to comply with those subpoenas. President Trump thus interposed the powers of the presidency against the lawful subpoenas of the House of Representatives and assumed to himself functions and judgments necessary to exercise the sole power of impeachment vested by the Constitution in the House of Representatives. President Trump abused the powers of his high office through the following means. Number 1, directing the White House to defy a lawful subpoena by withholding the production of documents sought therein by the committees. Number 2, directing other executive branch agencies and offices to defy lawful subpoenas and withhold the production of documents and records from the committees, in response to which the Department of State, the Office of Management and Budget, Department of Energy, and Department of Defense refused to produce a single document or record. Directing current and former, number 3, directing current and former executive branch officials not to cooperate with the committees, in response to which 9 administration officials defied subpoenas for testimony, namely John Michael Mick Mulvaney, Robert B. Blair, John A. Eisenberg, Michael Ellis, Preston Wells Griffith, Russell T. Vaught, Michael Duffy, Brian McCormick, and T. Ulrich Breckbull. These actions were consistent with President Trump's previous efforts to undermine United States government investigations into foreign interference in United States elections. Through these actions, President Trump sought to arrogate to himself the right to determine the propriety, scope, and nature of the impeachment inquiry into his own conduct, as well as the unilateral prerogative to deny any and all information to the House of Representatives in the exercise of its sole power of impeachment. In the history of the Republic, no president has ever ordered the complete defiance of an impeachment inquiry or sought to obstruct and impede so comprehensively the ability of the House of Representatives to investigate high crimes and misdemeanors. This abuse of office served to cover up the president's own repeated misconduct and to seize and control the power of impeachment, and thus to nullify a vital constitutional safeguard vested solely in the House of Representatives. In all of this, President Trump acted in a manner contrary to his trust as president and subversive of constitutional government, to the great prejudice of the cause of law and justice, and to the manifest injury of the people of the United States. Wherefore, President Trump, by such conduct, has demonstrated that he will remain a threat to the Constitution if allowed to remain in office, and has acted in a manner grossly incompatible with self-governance and the rule of law. President Trump thus warrants impeachment and trial, removal from office, and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. Mr. President, that completes the exhibition of the articles of impeachment against Donald John Trump, President of the United States. The managers request that the Senate take order for the trial. The managers now request leave to withdraw.
Thank you, Mr. Schiff. The Senate will duly notify the House of Representatives when it is ready to proceed to trial.
There you have it. The charges have been read by the lead House manager, Adam Schiff, for the House of Representatives in the impeachment of President Donald John Trump. Solemn ceremony there on Capitol Hill. The next step will be the president's lawyers will be informed, the House of Representatives will be informed that the charges have been officially received, and the Chief Justice of the United States will be summoned to the Capitol in order to take the oath of office to preside over this trial. Mary Bruce up there on Capitol Hill. And Mary, so striking. What a different Senate from the one that you cover every single day. No staffers on the floor, no senators milling around, no side conversations. Let's go back to Mr. Senator McConnell on the floor.
Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6 of the United States Constitution. Also, under the previous order, the presiding officer has been authorized to appoint a committee of 4 senators, 2 upon the recommendation of the majority leader and 2 upon the recommendation of the Democratic leader, to escort the Chief Justice into the Senate chamber. I ask that the presiding officer do so now.
The chair, pursuant to Order January 15, 2020, on behalf of the majority leader and the Democratic leader, appoints Mr. Blunt of Missouri, Mr. Leahy of Vermont, Mr. Graham of South Carolina, and Mrs. Feinstein of California to escort the Chief Justice of the United States into the Senate chamber.
So for the further information of senators, there will be a live quorum call prior to the arrival of the Chief Justice at 2 p.m. today. I ask unanimous consent that the Senate stand in recess subject to the call of the chair.
Without objection, the Senate stands in recess subject to the call of the chair.
As we said, we will be back at 2 p.m. when the Chief Justice will arrive in the Senate to take the oath to preside over this trial. He'll then administer the oath to the senators. And Mary, as I was saying before Senator McConnell got up, this is such a different Senate from the one you cover every single day, and it will be throughout the course of this trial.
And George, you can feel that in the hallways here today, just the seriousness and weight of this occasion. And I cannot stress enough how unusual it is, even just to see the Senate chamber packed in that way. All 100 senators in their seats, sitting silently, not a lot of staffers mulling around. What Chairman Schiff just experienced speaking before a full Senate is something most senators haven't even experienced. But it is something that Chairman Schiff has been preparing for now for several months. And now every single day throughout this trial, the full Senate is expected to sit there, as they just were, silently. No cell phones, no tablets, no staffers helping them out throughout this. They are expected to sit there and simply listen and weigh this really historic decision now before them. It is going to be a challenge for many senators. We are still waiting to hear the rules for how this Senate trial will be governed. That is something we will not hear until next Tuesday. And the managers now have this huge task before them. They are going to have to strategize going forward. While Chairman Schiff, Chairman Nadler, many of the other managers have been preparing for this, several of these managers just found out they're going to have these roles in the last day. They are now going to have to coordinate and figure out how they're going to present their case going forward, George.
And thank you, Mary. And Terry Moran, the symbol is a symbolization of the ultimate constitutional struggle, the fact that what you're going to have when this trial begins, members of the House, members of the Senate, Chief Justice of the United States, and the President's attorneys all in the same room undergoing that struggle.
And that, George, is the design of the framers of the Constitution. That's in the Constitution. They put the Chief Justice in that chair partly because they said, well, if there was an appeal to the Supreme Court, we couldn't have the trial in the court. We'll have it in the Senate. We'll have the Chief Justice there to do exactly what you just said. Communicate to the senators in the country. All three branches of government are present. This is as big as the American government gets, the gravity of the situation. And the Chief Justice, like the senators, there's not a lot of precedent, not a lot of explicit rules to go by. Each person in that chamber, the 100 senators and the Chief Justice of the United States, will be guided mostly by their conscience when it comes to what's the burden of proof? How much proof do you need to remove a president from office? What's relevant to the trial here? All those questions, which we're going to see coming fast and thick, those are all really to be decided individually, one at a time, in the consciences of the senators.
Thank you, Terry. And John, Carl, the president will not be inside that chamber. He'll be represented by his personal attorneys.
He will. Jay Sekulow, his personal lawyer, will argue the case, as will the White House counsel, Pat Cipollone. But it's interesting in watching that, George, and I was there in the chamber for the last impeachment trial some 21 years ago. The president has over and over again described this process as a sham, as a joke, as a hoax, asked for an immediate dismissal. But what you saw there is, although many of the Republican senators agree with him on those points about the House's impeachment, you see it being taken with all the weightiness and seriousness of a constitutional process, the constitutional process it is. They are all there. The Senate pro tem in the chair, Chuck Grassley, the most senior member of the Senate presiding, and all of those Republicans, along with the Democrats, they're silently listening and going through this process. This is a serious process, regardless of what the president says about him, and it's one that empowers the people in that chamber, the senators in that chamber, to do the ultimate act and to remove a president of the United States.
Thank you, John. And here with our legal team as well. And Dan Abrams, to pick up on that point right there, this is the way those words were read today, such a striking difference from the debate we've had in the preceding months.
And in part, that's the difference between the Congress and the Senate, right? The Congress is supposed to be the people's house.
The House and the Senate.
The House and the Senate. And the House is supposed to be the people's house, and it's supposed to be a bit more raucous. And the Senate is supposed to be more orderly and austere. But looking at it from the president's perspective, he liked it when the Republican leaders in Congress were interrupting and constantly mocking the entire process and trying to treat it as illegitimate. You're not going to see as much of that here. You may see ultimately, as most people expect, that there is not a conviction and a removal from office. But the entire process, I think, is going to be a more dignified one, a more serious one in the Senate. And I don't think that's helpful for the president, and I don't think he's going to like it.
Yeah, and they're following rituals, Kate Shaw, that have only been gone through twice before in our history, Andrew Johnson and William Jefferson Clinton. But the question is, how much play is there in the joints for the Chief Justice, for the senators, as they're considering these charges?
Yeah, well, that's right. So we only have these two historical precedents. I do think that the tone this morning was important, right? The Constitution gives the Senate the power to trial impeachments, and it actually says, the Constitution says, that when they do that, they will be on oath or affirmation. So all senators take an oath when they, start their terms, but this is a different oath, and it's supposed to kind of convert them to a different kind of body. It's not doing lawmaking. It's not doing rancorous politics. It's exercising this solemn obligation to decide, in particular when it's a president being tried, whether conviction and removal is warranted. So the oath administration this afternoon by the Chief Justice is a huge moment, but you saw that transformation, I think, sort of start to play out just in the images that we just saw today.
That's right. We are going to come back at 2 p.m. for the conferral of that oath. First, the Chief Justice will take the oath from the Senate Pro Tem, Charles Grassley, and then he'll administer that same oath that we just saw right there to do impartial justice to all 100 members of the Senate. They will go and sign a book after taking the oath, and then they will be prepared to sit in trial of President Trump. The trial likely to get underway in earnest next Tuesday. We will be back at 2 p.m. as the Chief Justice makes his way from the Supreme Court over to the Senate, and we will cover the taking of the oath. And, of course, we will be here every day for the trial, the Senate impeachment trial of President Donald John Trump. Stay with us.